Man, doesn't that look delicious? Homemade mushroom gravy and meatballs. Mmm. Stay tuned and I'll show you how to make homemade gravy. Welcome back to the Cozy Cottage Homestead. Today I'm going to show you how to make a simple supper meal. It's going to be hamburger meatballs in gravy with mushrooms. Sometimes I make the hamburger patties and set them down in the gravy and eat them over rice. Today I felt like changing it up a little bit, so I'm going to show you how to do that. I have 1 pound of ground meat. I have 1 pack of the Lipton soup mix. Mine is the generic brand. I have 1 egg and about 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. So I'm just going to go ahead and stir that up and give it a mix. And when you use the Lipton soup mix, you do not have to add any more salt because that packet of the Lipton soup mix has plenty enough salt in it. Now you could add a couple of crackers to this or breadcrumbs if you have it. But I'm going to show you what I do to take up the space for the breadcrumbs. And it's also just a little bit healthier. So let me go ahead and wash my hands and grab that other ingredient that I was just talking about. Okay, so I forgot to grab my other special ingredient to make these meatballs a little more healthier. Instead of adding breadcrumbs or adding crackers or something of that nature, add you some oatmeal, dry oatmeal. It can be the whole oats or the quick oats. I added about a ½ cup. That's going to take the place of the breadcrumbs and make it just a little bit healthier for you. And believe me, no one will even know the difference. Go ahead and give this a mix. In case you're wondering why the egg, people add it to hamburgers or meatballs. That is your binding ingredient. It helps to make the hamburger meat stick together better and also add a little nutrition to your hamburgers. Okay, so I'm just making meatballs. Just grab you up some of the ground meat. Make sure you give it a smash so there's no air bubbles in it if you want a meatball that's going to stay together better. So I'm just going to continue making my meatballs. Then usually I go back after I make them and try to even them up best as I can. Or if I notice it before, I just go ahead and fix it. And I'm just going to keep making the meatballs and I'll bring y'all right back and show you how I do the next step. Alright, so we have 12 meatballs that we made from the 1 pound of ground meat. I'm going to go ahead and start letting these brown on the stove top and get the mushrooms prepared for the next step. I'll bring y'all a little closer. So I just have I guess this is a pint of mushrooms. And I'm just going to give them a rough chop, just however your family likes them. You can also use canned mushrooms. So I'm just going to give it some slices. If you like it a little thinner, then chop it a little thinner. And when the meatballs get about halfway cooked, I will add the mushrooms right on top and let them just cook down a little bit. And then I will move y'all over here closer to the stove and show you how to make the gravy. The gravy is really cool. If you know how to cook with your basic ingredients, it's a lot healthier and cheaper to make gravy at home. And not only that, I'll show you the different stages of gravy so that you can make chicken or turkey gravy. You can make brown gravy, or you also could make a roux like for a gumbo using all of the same ingredients depending on what stages you cooked your gravy at. I'll show y'all that in just a second. Alright, so to start the gravy, homemade from scratch, if you're wanting to cook more of homemade food, I'm going to show you how I do it. This is shortening. You also could use vegetable oil. So you just want to melt it first to have a visual of how much oil is in there. Usually it's about 1/4 of a cup of vegetable oil or shortening. Let's go ahead and melt that and let it get hot over a medium heat. I didn't measure it, but I know by eyeballing it, it looked like it was about probably a little more, probably about 1/3 of a cup of vegetable oil, shortening, excuse me. And it looks like I should have used a little bit less. So I will just take these chunks out, put them back in my container. I kind of judge it by the depth of it in my pan, and I can tell that that's plenty enough of shortening. It's probably going to be hard for y'all to see because the black pan and the oil is in there. Alright, so I'm going to let it get hot. When I start seeing it bubble, I'm going to turn my heat up just a little bit past medium towards hot, or towards high. And on the meatballs, you want to just make sure that they're pretty much cooked before you put them in your gravy. And then you will let them cook down a little longer. Right, so I'm going to start out with just a sprinkle of flour to see if my grease is hot enough. Okay, my flour didn't just bubble all over the top of it, so I know it's got to get a little bit hotter. And usually it's equal parts of flour to the vegetable oil or the shortening. Flour and the vegetable oil. And the meatballs are cooking on about a medium heat. Okay, let's check up vegetable oil again. See that little bubble, little sizzle? That means we're ready to cook. I'm going to put about 1/4 of a cup of flour all around in my pan. If you don't want lumpy gravy, go ahead and get to stirring it while it is good and hot, and it will mix in. Any lumps that you see, just kind of flatten them out while it's good and hot. And you're just going to brown this. This looks a little bit soupy to me, so I will add a little bit more flour. Until it looks more of like a paste, but not a really thick paste. And that looks much better. And you see how when you scrape the bottom of the pan, it takes a little while before it comes back to it. To me, that means it's a little bit thinner than what I would like it to be. So I'm going to add just a little bit more flour. Alright, now it's about right. Now you see what I'm talking about? It takes longer for it to come back to the pan. So at this stage, you're just going to keep stirring it back and forth. And when it becomes a caramel color, that would be the point where you would cut off your heat and add your cup or two of water. And that would be for your chicken gravy or your turkey gravy. Or if you just like white gravy over biscuits. There's no milk in this recipe. It's just simply vegetable oil or shortening and flour and water. You add salt and pepper later. So you do have to keep stirring it because it will burn, and you don't want burnt gravy. That's not very good. So it's almost to a nice caramel color. And at this stage, that would be where you would use it for your turkey or chicken gravy or just white gravy. We're going to make brown gravy today, so I'm going to let it keep going. I hope y'all can see how it's changing colors. It's like a really dark caramel color, like a light brown. And I want to get as close as I can get to like a chocolate color without burning it. And I think the meatballs are good enough. Go ahead and cut those off. And we'll finish working on our gravy. Starting to get a little more brown color to it. Now, what I was saying about the roux, if you want to make roux for gravy, you would let it get as dark as you possibly can without burning it. And then you would just add a cup of water to that, and then you would stir it into your gumbo. And that is how us Southerners make our roux. So from this one little recipe, you can make different types of gravy and even your roux. It's really just that easy, folks. Instead of buying those little packets of gravy with all those extra unnecessary ingredients in it, it just takes a couple minutes to brown this up and get it to the right stage. And I promise you, you will love the old-fashioned gravy flavor much better than the packet gravy once you start using the old-fashioned gravy. Now, occasionally, I do have a few gravy packs on hand if I'm in a rush or I'm in a hurry. But every time I make them, I wish I would have just went on ahead and made me some homemade old-fashioned gravy. So this is almost to a chocolate color. That's the color that we want. So at this point, I will turn my burner down just a little bit. Probably in between medium and low. And your pan's going to start smoking a little bit, but that's how it works. So I don't want to get it any darker because I want it to be this chocolate, regular chocolate flavor. Chocolate color. Alright, so now we're going to add 1 cup of water really slow. Alright, now you just want to keep stirring it. Go ahead and turn your heat down to low so it doesn't bubble out of the pan. And it's going to get really, really, really thick. Okay, I know y'all can see that. I wish y'all could smell it. It smells so good. You like gravy and you never had old-fashioned homemade gravy? Y'all gonna have to give it a try. Now I'm gonna add about 1 more cup of water and see what my thickness of my gravy looks like. And keep stirring it. At this point, you can go ahead and turn it back up in between medium and low, because you want to see what the texture and the thickness of your gravy is, depending on what you like. Some like it thinner, some like it thicker. But usually it ends up being about 3 cups of water. Just depends on what thickness you want it and how much flour and oil you use. If you need less, then you use less oil and less flour. This is giving me almost a half a pan of gravy right now. So I know this gravy is very thick. So I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more water to it. And I think I am just now at 3 cups of water. I'm going to go ahead and turn it up to medium, because it's going to get really hot and bubble up and thicken up. And then I think that's going to be at the point that I want it to be at. And after this gravy cools off and you refrigerate it, it gets really thick. So if you put it back in a little small pot and add about another half a cup of water to it, it's going to stretch your gravy even further, and you'll have a lot more gravy. You'll think it's not much left in there, but you add a little more water to it, and it's just as good as it was the day you made it. I'm just going to let this simmer back up till it gets to a soft boil. You don't want it raging. I'm starting to see all the bubbles. And I'll be able to tell if that's the thickness that I want at this point. Just keep giving it a stir. And that looks good. Go ahead and add, I don't want any salt in it because I have a lot of salt that's going to be in my hamburger meatballs. So I'm just going to put a gracious amount of pepper. And I will go ahead and put just a little bit of salt. But remember, y'all can add salt and pepper at your table when you fix your plate. That respects those that can't have that much salt. You just add it at the table. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this all the way back down. I'm going to drop my mushrooms in here. Can you hand me the mushrooms? Alright, we got our fresh, organic, chopped mushrooms. Just going to add those in right now. Turn my heat down to a low. Seems like a lot of mushrooms, but y'all know mushrooms will cook down to just about nothing. I'm going to let those cook for just a couple of minutes by themselves. And then I'm going to add my meatballs. I just want the mushrooms to cook down just a little bit because they're going to add a little more moisture to my gravy as well. And then I'll add the meatballs in just a second. Man, that sure looks delicious. So let's recap the gravy and the different shades of gravy as we make it for different recipes. So when you first start... Oh my gosh, what is this so funny for?
I figured if I walked away that would help you, but that didn't help.
I made it worse. Okay, so let's recap what we've learned about making the gravy. When you first start the gravy, let it brown for about 5 minutes, the flour and the oil, until it becomes a nice caramel color. And that will make you your chicken or turkey gravy. For brown gravy, you want to let it go longer. Keep stirring it till it becomes a chocolate color. And if you want to make it for roux, you just go longer to where it looks like dark chocolate without burning it. So now I'm going to go ahead. The mushrooms have cooked down nicely. We're going to add our meatballs to our gravy. Alright, Go ahead and stir it in just a little bit to cover up our meatballs. We're going to let this simmer and cook for about 30 minutes. And then we're going to serve it over rice. And that will be what we're going to have for supper tonight. So just thought I would make this little video so y'all could spend a little time with me seeing how I cook and what kind of meals we have for supper. Very simple and very easy to make brown gravy or chicken gravy or roux. There's really no need in buying all of that stuff pre-made. That's part of the beauty of becoming more frugal, is learning how to cook from scratch. And it just really tastes a whole lot better, and it's going to save you a whole lot of money. So thanks for joining me today, and farewell, Homestead family, friends, and neighbors from the Cozy Cottage Homestead.